Welcome to another episode of Sports Cards Live with your host, Jeremy Lee.
All right, welcome everybody to episode number 128 of Sports Cards Live. It is Saturday, January the 29th, 2022. My name is Jeremy Lee. I do want to thank last Saturday's guest, Adam Gray, joined me for the PWCC Premier Ending Watch Party. We did have to go on to the next day as well, so got to do back-to-backs. That was fun. Thanks everybody who did join. Tomorrow night on Collectible Live on the Collectible TV YouTube channel, my guest will be David Randolph from Sports Investors Authenticators. Looking forward to that. Check that out on the Collectible TV YouTube channel tomorrow at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. Next Saturday on Sports Cards Live, coming back will be Tim Getch, CEO of ComC, for an update. It's been a while since he's been on the show, so we will hear what is going on over there. I do want to thank channel supporter Whatnot. Whatnot has some of the best breakers and slab auctioneers in the hobby on their platform. Check it out. I will be back on that platform in the next week or two with another live auction starting at $1, 1 minute auctions. Looking forward to that. Check it out. Stay tuned. I will let everybody know about that. Shout out to the Sport Card Expo, who will be having their first Edmonton show April 15th to 22nd of this year. And of course, the Mint Collective was postponed. We all know that now. March 25th to 27th in Las Vegas. Also looking forward to that. I want to thank all the subscribers and viewers. If you're not yet subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and give us a subscribe. Live interviews every Saturday night. Special shout out tonight, everybody, on a different sort of note, but I do want to make mention of this. Really good friend of the show, my friend Dave Slipka. Want to shout out his family on the passing of his wife, Bev. Dave, this episode is dedicated to you, the memory of Bev and your whole family. You've touched the heart of many, and my thoughts are with you, Dave. All right, as always, everybody, your comments, your questions are in play. Let's get to it. Tonight's guest got her first taste of the hobby in the early 90s when her older brother and cousin wouldn't let her play with their cards. So her mother would send her to the corner store to pick up milk and cigarettes. She'd spent the change on 91 Fleer baseball cards. She'd slowed down in college, and in 2005, her mother sent her all of her cards in suitcases, and she was back into the hobby with a vengeance. After stints with Beckett and Topps, she is now flexing her hobby pedigree at Goldin. Her favorite teams are the New York Yankees, Rangers, Knicks, and Giants. Her favorite athletes are Derek Jeter, Andy Pettitte, Mariano Rivera, John Starks, and Brian Leach. Originally from Yonkers, New York, currently hailing from East Chester, New York. Let's bring her out. Susan Lulgjuraj, welcome to Sports Cards Live. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
You are welcome. You are welcome. It is great to have you. You've been on my list of people to have on the show for quite some time. We tried a while back. We couldn't make it work, but here we are tonight. Seems like it's like all the talk of the town right now is Tom Brady. Is he retired? Is he not retired? I don't know. I'm just listening to what everybody is saying. Do you have any idea? What have you been hearing?
I mean, I'm probably hearing the same thing you're hearing, but from, having worked in the media business, for sports media business for a very long time, my best guess is that he's retiring. Somebody leaked it. He didn't want this news to break this way. He has a media company. He does his thing, and he probably wanted to break the news himself. So, and also he didn't really probably talk to people yet, and it's like one of those things like, oh, I found out the news on Twitter. Like, you never want to find out big news on Twitter.
Especially if it's about you.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, no doubt. Same here. I don't really know what's going on with this yet. I was just listening in on the clubhouse room, and they were going through and saying, okay, let's have a vote here. Do you think he's going to retire or not retire? And everyone's just having fun, just for discussion. But it's interesting, all the speculation right now. And to me, though, as a hobbyist, I'm a sports fan. I got nothing against Tom Brady. He's definitely a GOAT. He's worthy of our time and attention, and the hobby's time and attention. But the thing for me is that the first thing that came to my mind was, this is going to be the first case study in when a GOAT, a true GOAT, retires, and what will happen to the values of their sports cards in this new hobby era, being, really since the pandemic. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. Oh, and it's not just in the next few days. I'm talking about the next couple of years. If he does truly retire, what's going to happen to his cards over the next couple of years? And will it be any different than in the past when we've seen prior GOATs, if you will, retire? So I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. Any predictions from you or thoughts on that?
What's really exciting about this time is that yes, like Tom Brady's going to retire. If it's not now, which it will be, it's sooner rather than later. But we saw last week, and we have this like next generation of quarterbacks, and quarterbacks are king. And when it especially comes to football cards, that people are really excited about. You have Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen is getting up there. There's just this talent of this next generation. It reminds me a little bit back of I'm going to get the names wrong, but like Marino and Montana, and like kind of followed by Aikman. It's like it kind of feels a little bit like that again, and it's really excited to see like, okay, Tom Brady, great, thank you, and now he's passing the torch on to somebody else.
Yeah, agreed. You've got like a Roethlisberger as well. Drew Brees. That sort of they're moving. Yeah, they're moving along, right? And now handing off that baton. I hear you. That makes a lot of sense, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens. And there's all sorts of speculation who knows if he's even going to retire. But enough of that. I thought we'd touch on it because it is pretty interesting, and it does have an impact on the hobby for sure. And now that I say that, I'm just thinking before we move on. You think about a company like Panini, and they have the football license currently, so. And you've worked for Topps, so you know how card companies work. But if he's not going to play next season, and he's not going to be in those sets next season because he's no longer an active player unless they put him in some inserts with other retired players, is that going to hurt the football products that Panini's going to put out? What's the impact of that?
Yeah, I don't know if that's how it works. If I recall correctly, I have more experience in baseball because Topps lost the license like the year I got there for football, but the license actually carries over to the next year. So it's like if you retired, if in baseball, like if this was your last year, like 2021 was your last year, they could still make 2022 cards of you. So it carries over to the next season. So I feel like it's probably the case as well in football. So it's not next season that would be the issue, not 2022 cards, but potentially 2023 cards. But by then, like you have enough time to sort of work out a deal.
Yeah. Jenny Miller says, is it a rookie, not a rookie? Is he retiring, not retiring? What's up with all these word speculations? Yeah. I hear you, Jenny Miller. Okay, before we get into you, Susan, let's go and just say hello. We got Julian Birds on the bat. What's going on? Jake Dahl in the house. WNBA is back with us. Good to see you. Rocco Rosato, good frosty evening to all. Let's sit back and hear what Sooz says. Looking forward. Thank you, Rocco, as always. Jenny, good evening. Foul Fireball. Bent Cardboard, good to see you. Welcome to the show. Chris C, hello. Says, have a question. Don't you think the new eBay authentication process will actually hurt them? Seems like a lot of hassle. It's on our list to talk about tonight, Chris. I feel like enough other content creators have addressed that, so we'll see if we get to it. But appreciate the comment. Kurt, good evening to you. Go Yankees. There you go, Sooz. Fellow Yankees fan right there. Lucky K, good evening. Eric in the house. What's going on? Chris wants Brady to there it is. Chris wants Brady to retire. Retired to get out of Tampa and sign elsewhere, says Kraken Card. Skeppy, good evening to you. Chris says, time for Burrow, Mahomes, Allen, and the younger generation, right? I think that's what we were just saying. Makes a lot of sense there. Crack says, more market space for AEW cards to go up, and away. Too funny. Hey, those back pages in the house, what's going like when Jeter retired? There you go. Cardboard culture in the house. Abdeel. We got a Jeter collector in the house. You are a Jeter collector.
Yes.
You are. And I know that. We're going to get into it. We're going to get into Atlanta in the house. What's up, Jude? Welcome to the live show. Jenny Miller, absolutely will not hurt product people chasing Burrows. Not as much. Hey, good point. Good point right there. Brendan Ryan, welcome. Collector Fix Live. Hello. Rich Klein in the house. Rich, how are you? Says Sooz is great. And good Lord, Jeremy, nailing the pronunciation of her last name. Bonus points right there. I cheated. I asked her. I said, how? Michael Spiegel, good evening. Darren in the house. What's up? Sooz is the bomb. A great follow Yeah, we'll get into that too. Victor, always good to see you. And someone watching on Facebook, Sooz is top notch, hobby savvy as they come. That's why we have her on the show.
Maybe it was my mom, but I don't think she has Facebook. I don't know.
No, that's someone watching us on Facebook. Yeah. Oh, maybe your mom. I got it. Okay, Sooz, we were chatting, and we were going through your hobby history, your origin story, as is customary. Part of what I like to do is introduce the guests to the audience and let them get to know you a little bit personally. And what I found really interesting and funny and reminiscent of the old days was that you've been collecting cards a long time, but you've been on eBay since the days of no PayPal, writing a check, mailing that check to the seller, or waiting for them to get it, waiting for the check to clear. Talk a bit about, start with that as a launch point, really. Talk a bit about your hobby history and what you've sort of seen change over the years.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of people, I started collecting cards as a kid. I just was opening packs to find Yankee cards, didn't want anybody else. And then as time went on, it was, I'm just trying to put a timeline together. So I got my first job at 16, 17, like the summer of 16 turning to 17. And I thought it was a really great idea to take that money and buy baseball cards. Like that's what I did with my money. So sure enough, I'm going on eBay, and now I'm going to date myself, but 1996, this was 96 going into 97. Or it was 1997 rather, and who just won the World Series and who was the big rookie? Well, it was Derek Jeter. So I'm over here writing checks out to the sellers of buying lots of Jeter cards. Like I loved buying not just one card, but I loved buying like, oh, this one's selling 15 cards, this one's selling 20 cards, this one's selling 50. I loved just like lots of cards. So I would buy those of Jeter, and and people like, I bought it like today. Like people like, I paid yesterday. Where's my card? And I'm like, back then you were writing checks and I needed it to clear, and then it would have to get sent to you. You were waiting like 2-3 weeks to get your cards. But that was, like I said, I was 17 years old at the time, and that's what I was doing with my money. And my mom didn't necessarily agree, but what was she going to do at that point? Yeah. And then it never really kind of stopped from there. And then, you jokingly talk about PayPal, and like when PayPal actually came about, it was actually like a money market account. And it wasn't even just, a place like to send money and stuff. Like you could take your money and keep it there, and it actually like accrued interest on it. Again, this was a long time ago. It's not that anymore. And then, and then around 2007, I was a writer. I was a sports writer at the time. And I thought like, man, I really love writing and I really love cards. How can I marry the two of these? So my friend Marie and we created a blog, A Cardboard Problem. And that was in 2007. And everything exploded from there.
So how did you go from writing a blog in 2007 to working at Beckett? I mean, for me, growing up in the 80s, buying Beckett magazines when they first started coming out, it was like we didn't realize what Beckett was. It was a magazine that came to the store every month. You bought it. We sold them in my shop in the early 90s, but I never really thought about like what's the company behind this? Who are the people behind it? And so for someone else like yourself, who at the time had no connections to the people in the hobby, to the industry itself, how did you go from writing a blog to working at Beckett? How did that happen for you?
Honestly, creating that blog changed my life. Like that's not even an exaggeration when I say that. I created this blog, and at the time 2007 was like, blogs really started picking up in the hobby, and there's blogs here and blogs there. What made our blog different was that here were two women collecting cards, and we were card collectors, and people were like, oh cool, chicks, like that was really the reaction. But it became more than that, because like I was a writer, or I'm still a writer, and Chris Olds from Beckett was like, hey, listen, you have hobby knowledge, you're a writer, would you like to do freelance work for Beckett? Absolutely. I would love nothing more. Same thing. I would read the magazines when I was a kid. I remember going to Barnes and Noble, and if my parents wouldn't buy for me, flipping through, like reading through while I can, and like in the middle of the aisle. So I forget which, it was Baltimore, the National at Baltimore, the first one. I want to say 2010. I might get the year wrong, but it might be 2010. And I worked that entire weekend for Beckett, writing different articles for them. And then it was sort of like a tryout, and it went really well. And then I did freelance for them for 2 years. And then a job opened up. Tracy Hackler, well, he was there at the beginning. I think he left and somebody else took over. And then there was an open position for their Beckett football, hockey, and basketball editor. And I got the job. And then I worked there for 2 years. And then I moved on to Topps from there. Like, it literally changed my life. Without that blog, like, I don't write for Beckett. I'm probably not working at Topps. I don't work at Topps. I'm probably not on your show right now. Like, it literally changed the course of my life with that blog.
I think it's so cool. I think it's so cool how starting that passion project changes your life. Even for myself, I started Sports Cards Live almost 2 years ago. And my life has changed because of it. Just the people, the friends I've made and all that, those intangible benefits are just so great. But you've turned it into a career, and not just an industry sort of thing for yourself. You've moved through, and we're going to get into a bit more detail and all that. But you touched on the fact that you and your friends started. You were women in the hobby. Let's focus on that for a few minutes in terms of being a woman in the hobby. And Skeppy says right here, obviously the hobby is male heavy. How often do you feel like your knowledge of the hobby is questioned, and how do you interact back with people that act this way? I think it's a great question. Why don't you address that?
Yeah. Less now than before, like at this point, like lots of people know who I am. If you find me on social media, like it's easy to realize very quickly that like I have hobby knowledge, but like it does happen, right? When I was working at Beckett, I remember I had called somebody for an article, and it was somebody who had been in the hobby a very long time. And I called them up and I'm like, hey, blah, 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 whatever. I want to talk to you about this. And I asked like my first question. And before I'm even done, he stops. He's like, do you even collect cards? And I'm like, yes. Would you ask that question if a guy was calling you, or is it just for me? And he's like, oh, sorry. And then like went on with the rest of it. Like, I'm snarky. Like, I don't care. I got to the point in my life, like, I'm too old for this kind of crap. Like, don't question me, and we would joke, like my friend and I would joke, we would go to shows and like people would have a chrome card, right? And they'd be like, oh, this one is shiny. And you're like, really? It's shiny? Oh, wow. They're like, it's special because it's shiny. There was another show where somebody was like, same thing. He was like talking down to me and trying to explain the card to me. And I was just like, okay, that's great. And I walked away, and my husband's like, she made that card. It's like, it's like that kind of stuff. I don't have time for it. I will either be like snarky back to that person, or I just like, you know what? I don't have time for you. Like, if this is the lens you're going to live your life in, I don't have time to like clean it for you.
Do you think that because like, how is your experience different than that of other women in the hobby over the last few years?
Yeah, I mean, I see it a lot because like it's one of those things where, somebody, I don't know if you've seen this, but as a woman, I've seen this where it's like, I'll be like, oh yeah, I'm a Yankees fan. And a guy will need to be like, oh yeah, well, name me the entire 1952. It's like, it's one of those things, like they have to ask you questions to make sure like you've earned your badge. And I've seen that a lot in the hobby. So it's like, okay, I collect cards. And it's like, well, then they want to quiz you on things. And it's like, no, like I just collect cards. Like I don't need you to quiz me. Even if I want to collect the card because it is shiny, that makes me as much of a card collector as anybody else. I don't get that as much anymore, like I said, but I still see that with other women in the hobby. It's almost like a woman will show up and they still have to prove themselves that they're a card collector, and like, they're not just here because like, oh, now it's the next fun thing to do. And it's like, guys don't take them as seriously. And the thing is too, it's like you see more women, not just collectors, but also working in this industry. And the same thing like happens where they're like, oh, is your husband around? And you're like, no, it's me. I'm like, I'm the store owner. Like you can talk to me, it's that kind of stuff. I see it a lot. I talk to a lot of women in this hobby, and it's still happening, and it still happens. And it's frustrating just because like, it shouldn't be that way, you know, like people should be much more accepting, and it's just frustrating when I see that happening to other women. So as a thing, what I do, um whenever I see a female collector, like on Twitter or social media, it's an instant follow. I don't even scroll through their timeline to be like, oh, what do they collect? What kind of interesting stuff do they post? I was like, nope, follow, immediate follow. I will support and like push any woman, any female collector that I see in this hobby.
Tell me a bit about when we talk about supporting. I think that's excellent. I think it's just awesome. And there is a Women in the Hobby Facebook group that I believe you're a founder of. So how is that going, and how big is it now? I have had women on before who've been a part of it, so they've let us know back in the past, but that's already months ago. So how many women would you say are in that group now? Are there any? This might be a silly question, but I'm going to ask it. Are there any men at all in that group? And yeah, like what's the general sort of vibe of the Women in the Group Facebook group these days?
Yeah, I feel like Married with Children, where like Al Bundy had like his no women's group. Nope, no men allowed in our group. That's it.
Fair.
It's about 250 women right now. It is on Facebook, so I do think at times it might limit it because like a lot of younger people joining the hobby generally aren't like as active on Facebook as they may be on other social media channels. But it's really great. Like you have people coming in just showing off their collection. You have people asking questions. That's the thing too. It's like it's really hard for newcomers, and I feel like especially women who want to ask questions but don't know where to go because they don't want to be ridiculed for what maybe other people think are silly questions. But like people entering this hobby, it's really difficult. There's so much to learn, and there's such an educational like aspect to it, that like they need a place to ask. And like this group is like there's no dumb questions. Like because we literally all had those questions at some point during our hobby like journey. Just because mine was like 20 years ago doesn't make it any different because yours is yesterday.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Let's say good evening to Mark Hoyle. Welcome to the show. Sam Genova, welcome to the show, my friend. And Rich says it was 2010 in Baltimore. So good memory there. Good memory there. And Darren says Sooz was writing checks in the same era that Jeremy got that giant calculator, which happens to be sitting right next to me as we speak. Darren, thanks for calling me out yet again on my giant calculator. I love it. Bob says, awesome how one decision can change the course of a life, right? I mean, totally. Chris says, wish I'd known then what I know now. Don't we all? And Scott Green, welcome, says, Sooz, I would love it if Card Chat became a weekly show on YouTube like this on top of Twitter. That's an interesting comment. I mean, let's break from the agenda and talk about this right now. Sooz and I had some conversation earlier, and Sooz and I are both, were both co-hosts on Hobby Hotline, which is a Saturday morning and Tuesday night now call-in show on YouTube. And I have recently resigned from Hobby Hotline. If anybody watches it and you're wondering why you're not going to see me on it anymore, I resigned from Hobby Hotline this past week, so I won't be appearing anymore on that show. But Sooz is still a co-host of Hobby Hotline. And I said to her, so, why don't you have a YouTube channel? You're doing Hobby Hotline now. So Sooz, what do you think? You want to launch Card Chat on YouTube, or where are you at right now?
So technically, there is a Card Chat channel on YouTube that exists. I created it probably like a year ago, pretending like I would do this. Like I've been thinking about creating a YouTube channel, not just creating it, but posting videos to it, because the creation part got done over a year ago. And it's one of these things where I managed to come up with excuse after excuse as to why I haven't done these videos yet. It's something I want to do. I don't have, and now my latest excuse is I don't have the space. This is my studio, like my bedroom. It's I don't know what it exactly is. I don't know if it's nerves or it's just, putting more on my plate because I just have so much going on right now, or what it is, but I keep making excuses as to why I do not do it.
So Card Chat, and everybody, you'll see it on the ticker right now. Card Chat is two things, actually. It's the name of Susan's newsletter, which she emails out just about weekly. I've been getting it for a while, and the nice thing about it is that it's nice and succinct. It's not super long. You can literally read the whole thing in like less than 10 minutes, I'd say, right? Yeah. It's just like quick and to the point. It's a great weekly hobby read, but it's also something that you do on Twitter on Wednesdays, I believe. And Card Chat is really, it's a hashtag that you use. But why don't you explain to everybody kind of what it is? And then again, everybody, you can follow Susan on both Twitter and Instagram at YanksChick. But yeah, what is your sort of mission with Card Chat on Twitter?
Yeah, that actually started when I was working at Beckett. We were looking for different ways to engage sort of the hobby. And I opted to try to do it on Twitter because as somebody who's a writer, I like words, and Twitter is words. It's like it's all about the words on the tweets, especially back then. It wasn't as imagery heavy as then. So it was just it hasn't really changed much. It's actually still the same as what it was. So the only thing that changed was the day. It used to be a Monday, now it's on Wednesdays. So Wednesday at 8:00 p.m. Eastern, I start a series of 6 questions. Every 10 minutes I'll ask. So for the entire hour, I will ask a question that is related to a topic. So recently I did like 90s inserts, right? And every question was related to something about 90s inserts. Like, what was your favorite insert? Like, why was the 90s inserts the best inserts ever created, or it could be about redemptions, or it could be about, Fanatics acquiring Topps, or it could be about exclusive licenses. It's a different topic. I try to make it timely so that if news does break, leading up to the Card Chat, get the hobbies input and get people's input on Twitter, what it's about. But sometimes it's about a generic topic. It doesn't necessarily need to be related to the news.
Okay, so there you go. I do check it out. I've sort of replied a few times when I've had something that I felt was worthy to say, but it's fun, and it would be interesting to see how it would sort of translate to a live or not, or a pre-recorded even YouTube show. But no pressure on you for that. You'll get there when you're ready. Daniel Busby says 73 people in the chat. We should have 73 likes. We're over that now, but thank you, Daniel Busby. If you are new to Sports Cards Live, if you're here to see Sooz, I appreciate that. Thank you for coming, and I appreciate you, Sooz, publicizing that you're coming on, bringing more people, exposing them to Sports Cards Live. Appreciate that. If you are new and you like live action type interviews every Saturday, please subscribe to the channel. We do this every Saturday night. So again, thank you, Sooz. I do appreciate that. Jude makes an interesting comment. In 40 years of collecting, I've come across a woman collector once. And I mean, I don't know where Jude lives, but that's an interesting sort of comment. Albert Jones, hello to you. And let's see what Rich says. He says, what Sooz has done has made it so much easier for people like Sam Shuford, who rocks in her Women of the Hobby webcast and Instagram, etc., to be a successful woman in the hobby. That's got to be true, right? I mean, that you have sort of blazed that you're a trailblazer, Sooz. You blazed a path for other women. And even at the National this past year, I mean, there were more women there than ever. There were pictures of women having a woman-only sort of get-together, a networking event, which is awesome. And there were tons of... Were you there? Were you in those pictures? You probably were, right?
I was not at the show. I was invited, but I ended up having to do like a work thing that night, so I couldn't get to go.
But it's just awesome that was going on. So... yeah, I think you've been a big part of that, and it's always nice when someone has sort of blazed the path before you that you can lean on them as well. Rich says that your husband is a talented writer as well. That's interesting. Does he collect cards too?
Yeah, he's a card collector. We met each other. He's actually in the chat. He said hello in there.
Is he? What was his name?
Dan Good. He's in there.
Okay.
So we used to work with each other at the Press of Atlantic City. That's where I was a sports writer for a long time, and he was a reporter in news. And me being a collector and doing what I do, everybody knows. Like, it was never a secret. I wasn't one of those people that would hide it. So like when I was freelancing at Beckett, I was working at the Press of Atlantic City, and everybody knew I was the card collector. So after a meeting one day, he came up to me and he was like, hey, I opened this box of Topps Update, and we started talking cards, and that was his opening line. And that was it. That's how it started.
Maybe the only time in history that a man could say, hey, I opened a box of Topps Update, and that was the opening line to a romantic relationship. Good on you, Dan Good, who lets us know that Al Bundy's group was called No Ma'am. Too good. Welcome to the show, Dan. Nice to have you watching. He's just what, in the next room, or is he just behind you?
In the living room, yeah. He's in the room.
Too good. And your son's into Pokemon, is that right?
Yeah, he is. He's 5. And he loves Pokemon. I did not expect him to love it as much as he does, but man, he gets such a joy out of ripping cards and opening packs. So here's the funny thing. So he watches a lot of YouTube videos of people opening Pokemon cards, right? We have actually created our own videos. He wants to do this. So we create our own videos. So I actually have a bunch of videos that we have done that will never be on YouTube because he's 5 years old. But it's so funny because he loves it. So it's I wonder how he would feel if mommy was opening cards on YouTube.
That'd be pretty. Yeah, you're saying because he's 5 years old. Yeah, my daughter's almost 5 years old, and she watches some of these young kids with YouTube stations have their videos get 20 million views. It's absolutely crazy. Okay, Kevin Jones, hello to you. And I wanted to bring this one up. Skeppy says, what is the unbiased Yankees Mount Rushmore? No pressure, but don't mess this up. What do you take this for? It's a great question.
Okay. Thinking about it. Well, Babe Ruth, obviously. Mickey Mantle. Joe DiMaggio. And I'm sorry for everybody else, but I'm going to go with my Derek Jeter. I can't not. Sorry. That's it. That's my 4.
I figured I had those are the 4 that I was guessing you were going to go with. I'll back you on that. I think it's pretty it's a pretty good lineup right there. Todd says, my wife is always telling me to display my collection somehow and share it with others instead of it sitting in binders. Sooz, what do you think?
Years ago, I took all my cards out of binders. I do not use binders anymore. And while I definitely use boxes, it's a lot easier it's easier for me because if I'm sorting my cards, I don't have to worry about, I like to keep them in a certain order. So if I'm sorting my cards, I don't have to worry about pulling it out, putting it in, pulling it out, put it in, and potentially damaging the cards. So I prefer keeping them in penny sleeves, top loaders, and putting them in boxes personally.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, these are we can stick them in boxes and lock them away in dark closets and elsewhere, but it's not as much fun. So my one thing is, I'll put some cards on display, but only cards without autographs that aren't going to get and that don't have really light backgrounds, because I've purchased cards before that have a white border and even some white background, and they've been sitting out in the sun and they come in with a tinge of yellow. I never appreciate that. So
yeah,
be careful with the ones you do put out. And if there is sunlight, I just think that's sort of good advice. Jenny Miller says, I appreciate the Sooz share this. I didn't know you do the show, but I hit subscribe and it'll be my new Saturday Night Live. Thank you, Jenny. And welcome to Sports Cards Live. Much appreciated. Kevin Jones says, the ladies have always been the backbone of the hobby. So it's an interesting comment. And maybe because a lot of them, and I don't know if this is what he means, but a lot of the men have, spouses, girlfriends, partners, what have you. So maybe that's what he means, but a nice comment nonetheless. Triple V says, card collecting was initially trade/story heavy. When I started back in the day, the inclusiveness and connectivity is what I enjoy most about our hobby. Yeah. I was going to ask you earlier, Sooz, this is a good time just based on Triple V's question here, which is, what do you love about cards? Simple as that. What do you love about cards?
I love the connections. Honestly, that's what it's like. My husband collects cards, when we get to talk about cards and have discussions and share and have fun with the polls. And my best friend collects cards and we get to have this connection. It's there are people I never would have met in this world if it wasn't for cards. And I am eternally grateful for that because yes, I knew my husband, but would we have bonded over Topps Update? I don't know. My best friend, her and I, we've been friends, same thing. We've been friends since 2005. It's we connected. Yes, we connected. She's a Yankees fan, but wasn't just that. It's I know lots of Yankee fans, but she's a card collector. Now with my son too, we have this really great fun, opening Pokemon cards. So, I could see a car sometimes and be take me back and be oh, I remember when I got this card, or I remember what this meant for me. I feel for me, it's about the connections that you make through collecting.
Yeah, I say it all the time, the community, the relationships, it's really enhanced my life, in an immeasurable sort of way. speaking of Pokemon, you open these cards with your son. Do you have any interest in the content, in the subject matter of Pokemon yourself?
I played Pokemon when I was younger and not a kid because it came out. I wasn't a kid when it came out. So, but I had the Game Boy and I remember playing like the blue game or whatever it was. Like I would play it on Game Boy. I loved Jigglypuff. I don't know. I just think it was a cute name. So I loved Jigglypuff back then. So, it wasn't that I was opening these Pokemon packs and I didn't have any sort of idea of what I was opening. I mean, don't get me wrong. There was a huge learning curve there as well. It's not as extensive as sports cards. But even now, like a new game came out today for Pokemon on the Switch, and I played it for several hours today, and it was a lot of fun. My son had no interest in the game whatsoever, and I'm like, I'm over here playing Pokemon. You want to play? And he was like, Nope, I do not. I was like, all right, I'm gonna play by myself.
So you do have which must make it easier for you to bond with him when he's opening up those packs, and you actually recognize who all these characters are. So that's pretty cool. PSA 10 says, what % of women in the group, I think the Facebook group, have husbands or boyfriends who couldn't care less about cards? I have to think within the group, you ladies must have had this discussion at some point in time. Like, of all of you here that are in a relationship, does your spouse or partner care about cards? What's your gut feel on that? As even just to answer the question as a percentage.
It's funny. We've never talked about that. we talk about cars and we talk about, but I think there's a good portion that probably do collect, because I think a lot of them came into the hobby through their spouses or partners, because they collect. That's not all of them. I don't want to I'm not painting a broad brush here, but there's a lot of them that, would see like their partner collecting and it's like, oh, that's kind of cool. And same thing. Like they look for a connection, a way to enjoy their hobby with each other. So it's like, and then they liked it, and then kind of went on with it. But it's, again, not everybody. But I think there's a good number of them.
Yeah. Okay, good. That makes sense. Eric says, I love seeing women at card shows now that are not just there to keep their boyfriends company, also been seeing them on the other side of the table too. And that's true. There's, Black Jaded Wolf I've had her on a collectible show before. And, she's a prominent dealer in the hobby. So I agree. It is great to see it. I love it. Going back years when I'd be set up at the Expo in Toronto, for example, a couple would come up to my booth. It was obvious that the man was the collector and the woman was kind of hanging out with him. But I'd look at him and I'd say, she dragged you to the card show again. Hey, and I'd break the ice. They'd laugh. It was fun. And just a good way to, because I feel like oftentimes now, this is for women who aren't collectors. When they come to card shows, they're kind of there really just to pass the time for them. Not all of them, but you can tell some are just there waiting to leave. Some are actually interested in what's going on, even though they're not collectors. But I always use that line with a woman who kind of looks like she might not be having the best time. And then right away you get a smile. And I think it does sort of brighten their day. So I encourage other people who are set up at card shows to be nice to the women who are there sort of tagging along with their man if they're not collectors themselves. And Dan Good, you are welcome for the shout out. Glad to have you joining, and glad to have your wife right over there with me. This is awesome. Rich Klein says, tell the audience how your son ordered cards for you on eBay. Be careful. Card porn might have to do an article on that.
I know. I tagged him too. I was like, this happens in real life. I was like, it's not a joke. Like, this is a real thing that happened. My husband, Dan, he was like looking at cards on his computer, and he pulled up, a tab on eBay and was looking at something and then walked away. And him and I were like standing probably like 15 feet away. And we were talking. We're like in the other room talking. And I hear my son go, your order is in. And I was like, what did you just order? I was like, what did you just order? Because I guess what? I bought Pokemon cards with him, showing him on my phone or like on my computer. And I'm like, all right, here we go. There you go. And it gets at the top, it says your order is in. And he'd always say, your order is in. So we hear, your order is in. I was like, what was that? And he's like, I ordered a card. And we're like, what? And we go, and sure enough, thankfully it was only an $8 Mitch Moreland autograph card. So we did not renege and say like, oh, my son bought this. But he sits on the couch and he looks at my husband and he goes, I ordered you a card, Daddy. Say thank you. And I couldn't stop laughing. Like, poor guy, I'm hysterical laughing. And I'm like, he's never going to learn a lesson out of this because he thinks mommy finds this hilarious. So lesson is buy more cards for mommy and daddy.
Yeah.
We have been much more careful not leaving our screens open where he can just buy a card.
So it does happen then. It really does happen. Yeah. Okay. Good stuff. Brian, basketballs. Sorry I'm late. What did I miss in 30 seconds? You know you can go back and rewind this, Brian. But great to have you. As always, Foul 5 Ball says, I agree, binders suck. And then DJ Lazy Jeff, interesting. I like binders. I display them on a bookshelf like books, and I can flip through them and look at all my cards without damaging them. So that's a great sort of approach too. And, you know, I have some binders too, exactly for what DJ Lazy Jeff is saying, pulling out cards and looking through them. But they're usually sets or a player collection of cards that aren't worth a ton of money or a lot of money, whatever that is. But most cards for me are in top loaders and in a box, and then I'll pull out the box, one box every so often, and flip through it. So the binders, I don't think we're saying binders aren't good. It just depends what sort of cards you have. Like if you have complete sets of 400, 500, 600 cards, binders really the best place for them if you want to be able to look at them, right? So that makes a lot of sense, of course. Brian, basketballs, I'm displaying my Griffey Jr. and Frank Thomas cards that are R&N China, aka glass. I'm not sure. Okay, sorry, can't read that one.
So I kind of know what he's talking about. So recently, within the last several months, I bought a Jeter card that was from RNA China, and this one was actually a metal card. So I've been trying to find out like more information about these cards because I think it came out in 1996, but it's from his 1993 Topps like design. So Brian, if you have more info, please let me know and hit me up because I'm trying to find more information about this card.
There you go. I'm glad you know what they were. I wasn't sure. Thank you, Brian. Basketballs. And Facebook, I'm guessing this is probably Rich Barone from snowy Long Island. Rich, if that's you, my guy, welcome to the show. He says, I have a lady at the expo who drags her husband. Okay, that makes sense. He comes to see him at the expo. That's good. That's good. Jake says, my ex-girlfriend hated that I collected and her mom thought it was a waste of time to collect cards. I think we've all, right, Sooz? We've all gone through a bit of that. What is your extended, not your husband and kid, but your extended family, your parents, siblings, and close friends that you grew up with? What do they think about your involvement in the hobby and your collecting?
You know, everybody knew I collected. I was like one of those things where people were like, what do you do? I'm like, I collect cards. That's what I do. Everybody knew I collected cards. And I think because I'm a woman, it was sort of a novelty and nobody kind of like was like, that's silly. That's a waste of time. I think people appreciated it because you know what would happen is I would get people who then would like text me and be like, hey, I have these old cards. What are they worth? I'm like, absolutely nothing. But thank you for asking me. That would happen a lot. And I think I became, for my friends and like family and people, I became that like the go-to person to be like, hey, I have this card. Is it worth anything? So I think people appreciated that.
Yeah. Makes sense to me. Jenny Miller says, I think a good portion of the hobby find it as a relaxing, get out of your head while sorting, etc. type of hobby. I know for me, I found the hobby as an anxiety medication, like bingo, right? That's what it is. That's what it is for me. And I say it often, like I say, even in the intro song says sports cards is a lifestyle. It's more than a lifestyle for me. It's like my life. I have a career. I have my family, and I love like, it's all good. My life is great. Family, career, great. But the hobby is like that one thing that's always present and has been for decades. So, and it's because it allows us to, just like Jenny says, get out of our heads, sort of wind down, ground yourself perhaps. And kind of like, you know, as bad as, you know, we all go through bad times in life, right? And sad times. And for me, I've always, you know, it's like you can always lean on a good friend. You can also always lean on your collection to, you know, just to take your mind away from things. So it's a nice thing. Here's a great question from Waxel for you, Sooz. As a writer, what are your thoughts on card backs? I remember combing over the stats and snippets about a player as a kid. Now it's just congratulations and a whole lot of white space. And before you answer, I have to agree with Waxel. I had on the show, Jason Mosheroff from Upper Deck, the president of Upper Deck, was on a few months ago, and I said to him, can we just get rid of congratulations? Like, we paid for these things. You don't need to congratulate us. We know we're going to get a jersey card. We know we're going to get an auto. But I'll turn it over to you. Number one, thoughts on congratulations, and then thoughts on Waxel's questions as far as the importance of card backs.
Okay, I'm going to answer this from not a collector standpoint. I'm going to answer it from somebody who worked at a card company standpoint. Card backs, writing a different back for every single card costs money. So at Topps, I don't know what they do now, but at the time they paid a freelancer to write these card backs. So every little paragraph that was different on all the backs cost X amount of money. So if you needed, in every card set has a budget. So let's say your budget is $50,000. It is not $50,000, but that's just an easy number. It's $50,000. And I have to put some of that budget to the side for the card backs. That's less money that I can put towards autographs or relic cards. So as a company, what is going to give me the sort of most value in a product? It's not a paragraph on the back of a card. It's putting more autographs into a product. It's putting a better relic card into a product. So when you have the congratulations on the text on the backs of the cards, it's essentially a boilerplate. Nobody needs to write that. I can write that. I can write, congratulations, you pulled an autograph card of Derek Jeter from 2015 Topps, whatever. It doesn't matter. And that gets automatically changed, depending on who the player is. And that's something that could be automated on the back end of the system. And that doesn't cost me as much money as it does to pay the freelancer to write the card back. So that's how I'm going to answer that question. Whether or not I agree with it, kind of sort of neither here nor there. It is why it happens the way it is. I understand it. I get it. And now if you're asking me, would I rather have like 3 sentences on the back of a card, or would I rather have more autographs in a product? I'd probably go with the more autographs in a product.
And, the thing that comes to mind for me is that, you go back in through vintage cards, the backs are super interesting and fun. You got cartoons, you've got the little snippets about what their summer jobs were, that sort of thing, or winter job, whatever. But back in those days, there were very few places that you could find information about players. Now now you type in their name, you go to their Wikipedia page, everything you ever needed to know about that player is there. So there's less of a reliance or a need for that information to be on the back of a sports card. So going I think, with that explanation and what I've just said, going boilerplate on the reverse of a card, it's still nice to have something on there. Like, even the prior year stats is at least something on there besides just the boilerplate, because you are likely going to turn that card around every so often. You want there to be something on it. So, but from what you said, it does make a lot of sense, especially if it's going to help sort of buff up the rest of the product itself too, because there's more budget available for content. Yeah. Okay. I want to bring up Brian's comment here. My wife and I collected while dating. Instead of spending money on movies and drinking, we are now blessed 27 years later. So that collection did well. And that's right. Any money that you didn't spend drinking and partying, in your teens and 20s, I got to think and you put that into sports cards instead, it was a great investment. Julian says, Sooz, what is it like being hobby famous? 12,000 followers on Twitter is no joke. How do you respond to that?
When I started the blog, me and my friend Marie started our blog years ago. We were at the 2010 Baltimore convention, and we had like no less than 10 people come up to us, and they'd be like, "Hey, are you Sooz from A Cardboard Problem?" It was kind of funny. It was kind of weird. And I tried to make it a thing. I had a celebrity sign like a thing for me, wrote "Are you Sooz from A Cardboard Problem" on it. It was very silly. Having said that, I don't think I'm hobby famous. I think there's a very small bit of the hobby that knows who I am. And they have people who have been reading my blog since 2007. But it's kind of cool. I like that I can ask questions on Twitter and I don't get crickets in response. I actually have a really good engagement on Twitter. So I find that part a lot of fun.
Yeah, no doubt. Craig wants to know, what are your thoughts on investing in modern versus vintage wax, if this is something that you do?
I don't. I'll say flat out, I don't invest. Boom. I'm not an investor. I am a card collector. I have cards worth lots of money and they stay in my collection. Like I don't invest in cards. I'm not out there looking to be like, oh, who is the next big person so I could go sell. Not interested in that at all. Having said that, I personally find vintage to be very good, whether it's singles or wax, because in my mind, vintage won't go down. Vintage is what it is. These players are what they are. They're either Hall of Famers or they're not. Their careers are completely done, and you know exactly like what the end was. You don't have to worry about like, oh, I'm gonna buy this Burrow card, and then next week he goes out and he breaks his leg like Joe Theismann and he never plays again. Like that's not gonna happen. So I personally find like investing, despite me not being an investor, I find vintage to be a good investment, because I think it's only going to go up.
Yeah, I mean, especially if it's unopened, but even not. I'm with you on that stuff there. Lucky wants to know, do you rip much wax or just buy what you're looking for?
No, I'm both. Yeah, I definitely buy open. I love to open packs of cards, so I will buy several boxes throughout the year to open. I am a Topps Montgomery Club member, so I buy like all those exclusives and generally will open 90% of them. And then, I will certainly buy the cards I'm looking for. I get mad at myself sometimes when there's like a Jeter card that I need to get and it's a couple $100 and instead I spend those couple $100 on wax and I get like nothing. And I'm like, I could have just bought that Jeter card this whole time. So, but I do both.
I hear you. I don't break a lot of wax myself. I call it sharpshooting, just going after the cards you want. When you're a player collector, it's nice to open cards of your player, but it's also sometimes you just gotta go find that card, especially if it's one you really like. Let's go back and talk a bit more about your time at Beckett when you were there. You went there because of the blog, and I guess I'm just curious, like what was it like working there? This is post Dr. James Beckett being there. He had sold the company by the time you started, but what was the culture like there?
I worked at home, so they're based in Dallas, Texas. I'm from New York. I lived in New York, so I worked from home. But I still had a really good chance to like make connections there with people. I've been to like going to card shows was a big way of how I did that. Going to the National, going to the Sports Card Expo in Canada. Like, I would go there and help out at the booths, and that was really a lot of fun. And it also was a way to like find stories and connect with people. It was we started becoming very corporate-y. Like there was a lot of like sort of red tape and I don't know, stipulations and like it was like it wasn't as fun as I hoped it would be. I'll say that. Like that's the best way to put it. It wasn't super fun. It was just like I loved working in the hobby and being in the hobby, but unfortunately, like I felt like it was it's just, it was all at the end of the day, like every company, like, so I'm not gonna pretend like they're any different. At the end of the day, it was all about the dollars and like what, how much money are we making? But it felt too much like that, if it makes sense.
Yeah, I can definitely see that just from my own experience as well, working in different companies. That does happen. Some companies, the mission statement is more all encompassing of like, of all stakeholders versus just the shareholders. And some companies, it's mostly just about the share. And when I say all stakeholders, I mean customers, I mean employees, right? Some companies, it's mostly about shareholders. But let me ask you this then. You spent time there. You obviously interacted with a lot with other hobby industry workers. What was the one thing, if there is one thing that you feel that you learned there that has served you well as you've moved on in your career?
I love talking to the graders. I actually like just even as people, I love talking to them. I loved hanging out with them. But you know what? One thing they did teach me, how to spot a fake Mariano Rivera rookie card. Because I bought a raw one off of eBay and was so excited to have it. And it was like, the Bowman one where has his arm up and he's in street clothes. And I brought it with me to the White Plains show where they were grading, and I was like, "Hey, check out my card! Look at it!" And they literally like picked it. I'm like looking for a card, but like I don't have any raw cards on my desk. But they picked it up and they were like, "Yeah, here you go. You could put that in the trash while you're at it. I'm like, oh my gosh. So they sat there and explained to me like the feel of the card, how, what's going on. And that to me was super valuable, because then I was able to tell like, okay, I'm learning more about fake cards, because that wasn't something I ever really worried about. I'm not a big grader. I don't really grade my cards. So buying raw comes with, a lot of like sort of, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but there's things that you could end up with a fake card or reprint or something. And I learned more about that at the time working there.
Oh, that's okay. Interesting. Really interesting. I want to get in and talk about your time at Topps. Before we do, a couple of quick comments from the chat. Jenny Miller, Sooz, do you have any graded in your collection, or do you only like non-graded?
In general, 90% of my collection is not graded. I'll buy graded. I don't have issues buying graded. I just don't grade my own cards normally. I have graded cards. It's just generally something I'd rather spend my money buying cards than grading cards, because I'm not reselling it at this point.
Fair. Albert Jones says, can't believe nobody asked yet, is Brady retired or not? We did touch on at the very beginning, Albert. I don't think he is yet retired, but time will tell. Jenny says, investing, your son is doing it right. Young Pokemon will never get a torn ACL, which true enough. Thank you for bringing that hobby line back into relevance, Jenny Miller. Rich Barone is in the house. Yes, of course I love all New Yorkers, Rich Barone, and always good to see you. Darren wants to know, Sooz, will you collect Jason Dominguez, or is modern not your thing?
Modern is very much my thing. I'm more of a modern collector than vintage. I'll collect him if I can afford his cards. I can't afford his cards right now. But he's, of the Yankees prospects, he's not the one that I have my eye on. So I have cards of that prospect that I have my eye on, which happens to be another shortstop from New Jersey. So I'm collecting his cards instead.
Okay, good stuff. Good stuff. Here we go. Skeppy says, what was your thoughts about the latest Hall of Fame results? They let Big Papi in, but snub out Bonds and Clemens. How do you feel about that era of baseball in the hobby? And before you answer, I believe you put out a tweet the day of the announcement. Was it you who said that the Hall of Fame class or news release is not going to be what you're expecting? Did you say that?
I said the Hall of Fame announcement is today. It's not going to go the way you want it to go.
That's what you said. So speak to that. What did you mean by that?
Nobody's ever happy at the end of the Hall of Fame announcement. So I don't know what you wanted it to be, but it's not what whatever way you wanted it to be, it did not go that way. I'm pretty, that's what I felt about it. Having said that, for me personally, I was talking about the fact that Bonds and Clemens were not going to make the Hall of Fame, which I personally think is terrible. I think they should be in the Hall of Fame. What do I feel about that era of baseball? It's the era of baseball that brought us all back. Like baseball was like sort of dying at the time. And if it wasn't for McGuire and Sosa in 1998, we're not here. It's kind of ridiculous that they could embrace the steroid era. And I'm talking about baseball. They could embrace it. They could highlight it. They could promote it. But then when it comes to like wanting to put them into the Hall of Fame, we're like, we're not going to go there. That bothers me a lot. Because it's so hypocritical and it's very like exploitative of the players. And I don't like this. I don't like it at all. I saw a baseball reporter who had tweeted out that day saying the fact that they lowered the time on the Hall of Fame vote from 15 years to 10 years is interesting, because I think you have to be in the BBWA for at least 10 years to get a Hall of Fame vote, I think it is. And all those sort of like kids and young adults who grew up on that era were just going to start getting their vote for the Hall of Fame. But because they shortened the window of being on the ballot from 15 years to 10 years, they missed out on those people who were going to be able to vote, who grew up watching these people play. So that's my opinion on it. It bothers me. I think they should have been in, and the fact that they're not in is kind of a joke.
I'm with you. I think Bonds and Clemens need to be in there. Where do you sit on Pete Rose?
It's still the Hall of Fame. I think that I think he deserves a place in the Hall of Fame as well. Like, I get it, but at the same time, you're just going to pretend like our hits leader, the baseball hits leader, doesn't exist. Like,
Yeah.
it's silly. It was like those Topps cards on the backs of the cards. It was like, he's blacklisted, so Topps can't put him on cards. And then when they had those like stats on the back, it's like, I forget what year it was. It was like, people were chasing like milestones, and one of them was like, so and so, whatever guy is 2,000 hits behind the all-time hits leader. Like, because like it's so vague, like they're not even mentioning like Pete Rose's name and like in the text in the back. It was very silly.
Yeah. I'd like to see them all in myself. I know that's a divisive sort of topic, but that's okay. We don't have to get divisive here tonight. Couple questions about you and collecting Derek Jeter. DJ Lazy Jeff says, how difficult is it to collect Jeter? I imagine there's a lot of people chasing his cards. Do you ever wish you collected Brett Gardner instead?
I have actually like, it's difficult because they're expensive, I have so many though. Like, I'm up over 2,500 different Derek Jeter cards, so I have a lot. But the number is probably way higher than that because I also have not done a very good job of cataloging my cards. It's a lifelong mission at this point. That'll be done in like 50 years from now. What I have found is actually Jeter collectors are really wonderful. I'm in a couple of different Jeter groups on Facebook. I am friendly with like the number one person on the PSA, like Master Set Registry. Like, they're very forthcoming with their information. They're super helpful. Like, the guy who's the number one on this PSA Set Registry, like, he would email me like when I would have questions, like his stuff I'd write on my blog, and he would just email me questions. He knew there was a card I was looking for, and he put it to the side for me. I have found that Jeter collectors are actually like really great at supporting each other.
That's always nice. Always nice when the player collectors get together and maybe, even form an alliance and stop beating each other up and actually start taking turns on cards, that sort of thing. I think that's always nice to see. Brian Basketball says, Susan, if you had to give away your collection but could keep one thing, let's go one card, what would it be?
That's not very nice.
You make me choose between my children.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, I mean, I guess it would be my Jeter SP, like that would probably be it.
It's funny, right? People love to ask that question, but we don't love to answer it. It's not a fun question to answer because people ask me all the time. It's like, I don't know. Like, just I'm giving them all away at that point.
At that point, like, why would I want to keep the one? Like, it's just going to give me bad memories of having the rest of this collection.
When I used to have way more. Rich Perone, she is a Rangers fan, Rich, but keep it cool, Rich. Keep it cool. Rich is a major Islanders fan, so keep it cool, Rich. Keep it cool in the chat, my friend. Joe Perot in the house from Santa Cruz. Good evening, Joe. Always good to see you. Get Swifty says, that's one thing I hate seeing is people making custom cards if they're not making fake cards. Not sure what that's in relation to, but welcome to the show, Get Swifty. And okay, here we go. Here's a Craig says, Sooz, is breaking cards good or bad for the hobby? Now, before, I think he doesn't mean like actually breaking it in half. I think he means breaking into packs. The thing I have to say to Craig is like, you really have to look at this question, and nothing against you, Craig, but it's almost a silly question because no breaking, no singles, no breaking, no set collecting. Like, there has to be breaking. It is obviously good for the hobby. But I think what he means is group breaks and the gamble aspect, obviously. Is that good or bad for the hobby? Why don't you give that a shot?
I think, like with everything, there are good and bad aspects to it. I think overall, though, it's probably on the better side than the bad side. I have joined group breaks, and I have actually pulled very nice cards from group breaks. I joined a group break with Crack and Wax many years ago and got an Aaron Judge rookie heritage autograph. Like, not going to complain about that. I think I got it for like $30 for the break. Like, I'm not sad about that. I think it's also a really great way for new people to understand cards. Like, there's so many videos and people showing cards, and like, you get a really good education from that as well. And then it's a good way for people who, I can't afford to buy into Immaculate, but I can afford to buy into a break for it. It's that kind of stuff. I think there's more good than bad.
Yeah. I think I'm just grateful it happens. and because that way we can go out and find those singles that we want. So I think it's a good thing. It's giving people the ability to act, on team select sort of breaks. You can pick your team. I think it's a good thing for the hobby overall. And I mean, there's shenanigans and that, and just like in any industry anywhere, but there are definitely a lot of breakers out there that have integrity and do it right. And kudos to them for just being good business people, good hobbyists as well. Lots of talk in the chat about the baseball players who should be Hall of Famers that aren't Hall of Famers, the Pete Roses and all that. So I'll leave that to the chat to discuss, but nice to see y'all getting passionate about that. Rich Brown does concede that Derek Jeter is a god. He says he is a god. That's great. Get Swifty. So you're telling us you like Jeter. Yes, she does. Yes, she does. Rich Klein, wife and I were married on Derek Jeter's birthday, so we have a little shrine to him in our living room. Really, Rich? Is that why you have a shrine to him? Because you were married on the same day? That's pretty cool. Very nice. Chris C keeps his 86 Fleer Jordan rookie. If you got to keep only one, that makes sense. That makes sense to me. That's a card that why not keep, right? Why not keep? Okay. Lots of comments, everybody. Thank you for all the action and all the engagement. It's really great. Let's go back to you and your career. I want to talk about Topps now. So, what caused you to leave Beckett and go to Topps?
Yeah, I just was looking for something new, something a little bit different. But then it's also like, oh, look, here's a job opening at Topps, the most iconic card company in the world, they're based in New York. So, I lived in New York. So I reached out, I saw this job opening. It was for a sports editor at the time. So I reached out to somebody I knew there and was like, hey, I see this job opening. What's up? That was on a Friday. And then on Monday, they were like, yeah, come in on Monday. I'm like, you got it. And I came in on Monday and I interviewed for the job. And by that Friday, I had the job. So yeah, it was really exciting. And the job was, as a sports editor, was to pick the images that went on the fronts of the cards. Was like the bulk of the job. There was a lot more to it than that. But the bulk of it and the coolest part was like you got to pick the images that went on the cards. So I did that for about 10 months. And then I moved over to the marketing team where I was able to actually utilize the skills that I had from working in journalism as the marketing communications manager. And I handled Topps's all their social media accounts. I wrote their press releases, did the occasional interview here and there. And I did that for 4 years.
And talk about the culture there. I mean, we talked about it a bit at Beckett. It's always interesting to me as a collector, and again, not, these companies seem so far away, and now they're not because of just the connectivity. But what was the culture like back there at Topps when you were working there?
I really enjoyed working there. The fact of the matter is you're surrounded by cards. It's amazing, and there's people who share the same sort of passion that I did about cards. So I could go into work and I could sit there and talk about cards and have discussions about it. And, it never got old. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Okay. No, good. What would you say so it was the second company in the hobby / industry that you worked at, yet it's a different company, different people. What can you identify what maybe the biggest difference was between Beckett and Topps?
It was just, Beckett, because it was a lot of writing and stuff. Beckett was a sort of a daily grind, the day-to-day was just a lot. And kind of became like that a little bit when I was doing what I did on social media. But at the same time, I feel like I was having an impact. I think that was a big thing. I felt like I had a bigger impact at Topps than I did at Beckett. So I was working on the marketing team. You sort of have an effect on the company as a whole and working through all the different kinds of all the different brands. Whereas at Beckett, I'm just writing about the news, which I love. I love it even now. That's why I have a card chat newsletter. I love writing about cards. But I loved working at Topps because, one, I learned so much about the industry, which, I love talking about, but I also, got to have an impact on things. There are things that happened at Topps, I still see them doing now, of things that I helped them create, or a project I work on that they're still utilizing. So it's really cool to see that happening.
the most important question right here from Brian Basketballs is, did you get free bubble gum as a perk?
Not just bubble gum, but I got ring pops,
Ooh.
and baby bottle pops. If I didn't eat those, but it's literally like putting sugar down your throat. But yes, so there was lots of candy there.
All right. Well, interesting stuff. We're going to get on to your time at Goldin in a minute. A couple comments here. Albert Jones, watched the movie 42 tonight. Really great movie. I agree. I love that movie. And, you know, I love that movie so much. Jackie Robinson is my Jackie Robinson rookie is my favorite card in my collection. I think if maybe that's the one I'd keep if I could only keep one, but it's Pee Wee Reese who really stood out to me in that movie. Albert Jones, did you notice how awesome of a guy Pee Wee Reese was? Because I came out of that movie knowing how awesome of a guy Pee Wee Reese was, and went and pursued his card as well to pair up with the Jackie. How about you, Sooz? Any comments on Jackie Robinson and Pee Wee Reese? Just because I talked about it for a minute there.
Yeah, I've never seen that movie. I actually have it on DVD, and it's probably still in the shrink wrap. I've never watched the movie.
Get it graded. Get it graded like VHS.
Right, that's a new thing, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I got every time like. I love Jackie Robinson, and just like hearing the stories, like I'm a very emotional person. Everything makes me cry. And so like hearing stories and like reading things about him, like it really does. It makes me emotional. Like I get like teary eyed, like reading everything that he had gone through and everything he went through. And like, you know, it's pretty impactful.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. That movie, you'll love it. Savor it though. Like it's a movie I'd love to be able to watch again for the first time and experience it like that. It was wonderful. Rich Barone says Thurman Munson should be in the Hall of Fame. Sure, why not? Why not, Rich? And Bent Cardboard says sports cards is in a whole is a form of gambling. Prices go up, prices go down by the minute. Now, I'm just going to bring up a bit of this little chain of discussion. Chris C says it's low risk if you buy correctly. Where Bent Cardboard says risk is risk, it's gambling, to which Anthony George says gambling. So someone who collects anything is a gambler now. So I'm going to go, I mean, my thoughts are that it's like every time if we're going to say that sports cards as a whole is gambling, because it isn't, but if we're going to say that, then it's like living is a gamble, because anytime you breathe in, you could breathe in a virus that could kill you. Anytime you step out of your house, you are gambling with your life. So it's a very extreme position to say that. But there certainly is an element of gamble, and there are certainly ways to gamble in the hobby. But as a whole, for people who've been in the hobby for longer than a minute, let's say, and I know that term, a minute's kind of catching on as a term right now. But if you've been in the hobby for longer than like 18 months, there's a lot that it's not so much gambling. I don't consider it gambling for myself, but there is risk when you are deploying a significant amount of money, whatever significant is for you, into a card. There is definitely risk, but risk isn't always gambling. I don't think. What do you think, Sooz? Is risk always gambling? It's a big question.
Like, I think there is gambling aspect within the hobby. You know, anytime you open any type of wax, it's a bit of a gamble. And you know, it's funny because like I wrote about this, you know, in one of my card chat newsletters that I think the subject line was something along the lines of the gamble brings me back, you know, it's like essentially to opening wax. Like, why do I keep opening wax when I want to buy, you know, the singles that I want? You know, I like the little bit of the gamble. I like the idea of like, you know, I could hit something kind of big, even though I'm never going to sell it, but like, I'm going to hit something big. Like, I think you just have to be smart and responsible about it. Like, don't go over your head. You know, if you can't afford it, don't buy it. Like that's the reality of the situation.
Yeah. Mike Petty says 95 to 98% of vintage packs are fake. Like, I need to know, Mike Petty, where's your evidence for that range? Like, how do you come up to 95 to 98? Sounds like you're just kind of throwing it out there, you know, willy-nilly style, because I just don't think you can back that up. I think it's number one, I think it's be impossible to back that up. But anyway, I mean, it's an opinion, I suppose, more than the fact. And that just implies that every vintage pack that exists, somebody kept the wrapper and then found the cards later and put them in and sealed it up, went through all that trouble. I know people go through that trouble, but to say 95 to 98%, I don't know what the rate is, but I think that's way high, just personally. How about you, Sooz? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking to somebody who spent years in journalism, so unless you have facts and anything to back that up, like, come on, that's kind of a throwaway statement.
Yeah, little ridiculous on that one, Mike Petty. But hey, keep the comments coming. Darren says, Sooz, what is your take on the remakes of past year's designs, the throwbacks? I'm not a huge fan. Let 84 tops be 84, right? What do you think of that?
Yeah, I liked it, the first one or two times they did it. It's kind of fun, to sort of like, nostalgia is a big part of the hobby, and it's kind of fun to look at that, back at that stuff. But I think it's at the point where it's a bit overdone.
Fair. Yeah. I feel that way too a little bit. I don't mind the odd throwback or archives or heritage type of set, but if it's done over and over again, it's like, yeah, just leave that design alone. I totally see where Darren's coming from there. And especially when it comes to like tribute cards and that, like, do them to an extent, but you just don't want to just drown out the appeal of a design because you see it more and more, so many times over and over again. Anthony George says, I think it would be amazing to work for multiple different companies in this industry. You must have a crazy wealth of knowledge and experience. Appreciate you sharing it with us. Yeah, that's a nice comment. Thank you for that, Anthony. And thank you again to Sooz for of course, coming on and sharing all of that, all your knowledge with us. Let's talk more about Goldin now. So you left Topps. How long was there between you working at Topps and you starting to work at Goldin?
About 18 months.
Okay, so a good amount of time. And what was it that brought you out of hobby industry retirement and back into working in one of the hobby's sort of biggest brands out there, most sort of visible brands in our hobby?
Yeah, so I left Topps, and I was working outside the hobby. I needed a little bit of a break. Like, it became a lot. Like, not gonna lie, like, it was baseball cards all day and baseball cards all night, and it was, well, that's my life now too. It's a little different. I think I've done a better job of being able to manage my time a little bit better now. But it was a lot, and I needed a break, so I left and started. And then I wasn't gone that long. Like, that's when I started my newsletter. That's when I started Card Chat, the newsletter, because I wasn't in the hobby anymore, and I sort of like was able to like cleanse myself of like what I needed. I got back into it, and I wrote a Card Chat newsletter, and I actually had mentioned Ken Goldin in the newsletter, and I just was talking about his sort of like marketing prowess in it, and how like he does a really great job with like marketing and PR. He does a good job. And he emailed me after the newsletter. No idea like how he even saw it, and he emailed me afterwards. And then, just was like, hey, look, listen. He's like, you ever need to get in touch about anything? He's like, just email me. He's like, I'll you don't need to write about me without asking questions, kind of thing. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And then like a little while later, he emailed me and he was like, hey, you want to talk? And I'm like, sure. And we started chatting, and then, he was like, yeah, I'm working on things here. Like, maybe there's a job in there for you. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And this was months before I started working there. So like we kept in touch. And then they came calling, and they were like, hey, we have a job for you. And I was like, okay, sure. And I started working at Goldin.
And how's it going so far? How are you enjoying it?
It's good. I actually am like in a different position than when I started there, which is great. I actually love my new position. I'm working back. I didn't start on them. I was on a different team then, and now I'm on the marketing team. And it's been really fun. Like it's exciting because like, as somebody on the outside, like you see all these crazy headlines. This sells for $1 million. This is selling for $1 million. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And now like you're part of that, and you're seeing like all these cards and just the excitement of the hobby and just what people are doing. And every day is like super exciting because like you never know what's going to come in the building. Like, what amazing card, what amazing piece of memorabilia, what like super cool like comic or something is going to be coming in the building. And that to me is like really exciting because I love the hobby, and it's great because even at Topps and even at Beckett, I've never been at a place where the people love the hobby as much as I do. And I know that sounds silly, but it's like I've always been the one that's like, hey, did you see this news? Did you see what happened? And I have that happening to me now, where people are like, hey, did you see what happened? And I'm like, I did. You saw it too. So it's great because like I could like, I work at home now. I work remotely now, but like I could pick almost like all these people to talk to in the building, and they know the hobby. Like we can sit there and talk cards, and it's really wonderful, and I enjoy it so much.
Is there a lot of anticipation and excitement around the virtual office right now, surrounding the Netflix series that is due to come out this year, starring Ken Goldin?
What Netflix series? I'm just kidding. I can't. It's like this one of those things where it's like, oh, first of all, I don't know anything about it. Like literally, what you guys have read online, that's all I know about it. And I also know I can't talk about anything else, despite the fact that like I don't know anything about it. And that's the honest truth. Like I don't know anything about it. But I can't even talk about like what I don't know about it because I don't know anything about it.
Okay, let me ask you this. The same question I've asked you for the last two companies that you worked for, being Beckett and Topps. What have you learned so far new? What have you learned that's new for you? I guess that's sort of inherent in being something you've learned in your time at Goldin so far.
Yeah, it's a whole different industry, even though it's still like card related. It's a whole new industry. It's an auction house, and I've never worked for a company. I mean, technically Beckett sold cards on the secondary market with their marketplace, but that was not a priority. I've never worked for a company, that was selling cards on the secondary market. Like working at Topps, like we were the first point of contact for those sales. So it was in the creation of cards and then the marketing of the cards and all of that, where now like we're taking stuff that's already been created and reselling it. So it's an entirely new industry. And I'm the type of person, I love to absorb everything. I try to learn as much as I can. And so it's like, I've just been trying to be a sponge, trying to get everything that I possibly can. I've learned a lot, and even just like, I know you've had Ken on here, and like, even just listening to him speak, like he has so much knowledge, like hobby knowledge and stuff. Like I love just listening to him talk about it because I learned something. Like, I don't even know how he retains all of that knowledge. I'll be honest. It's like, I learned something new from him, like every time.
I'm sure the guy he's an OG. I dubbed you an OG on the advertising. He's
like the OS of OG.
the O. Well, we got Rich Klein in the chat here. He's an OG as well. Okay, we're gonna go to some comments here. Mike Kohler says, "I see the collectible shirt. Yes, I'm wearing a collectible shirt. Got it at the National." Says Jeremy, when can Canadians buy collectibles? I don't know, Mike, but not yet. Not yet. You need to be a U.S. citizen at this time. WNBA says, hobbies are money losers. I have lots of friends who spend six figures on a boat, tens of thousands on gas and gear each year to catch $5 fish. Back to the whole, gambling aspect of the hobby. So that's a fair comment. Puts things in perspective for sure. Rich Klein says, Jeremy, dead on comment about life. My sister-in-law took a terrible wrong stop Friday night and has to have emergency surgery on her leg tomorrow. Yeah, I mean, every time you leave the house, you are gambling. Okay, keeping on going. Julian says, as an aside to this great conversation, Jeremy, it throws me off whenever you refer to me as my real name. Still not used to. Well, Birds on the Bat has been involved in this chat on this show for several months, and finally found out his name, so I get to call him Julian now, and I will continue to do that, Julian. And Boss says the way we use minute in the Bay Area is meant to mean a long time. Yeah, I guess I kind of got that mixed up. I think I used it in terms of it being a short time. So thanks for setting me straight, and Boss, I appreciate that. Rich says it's great to see your enthusiasm on the hobby. Great to see Jeremy and I are not the only card geeks who can talk for hours on the hobby. Rich, we're far from the only two. I do this every Saturday night with somebody different. We're coming up between Sports Cards Live, After Hours, Collectible Live. I'm coming up right now on about 200 episodes, most of them being interviews. So there's lots of nerds like us, Rich. Lots of nerds like us that love to talk cardboard for sure. For sure. And Anthony George says, Rich, I feel that most of the regulars here are in the same boat as you. I am at least. Good to know. Good to know. Lots of comments coming in tonight, everybody. Thank you so much for just taking part in the show. I'm just going to scan them here quick. and see if there's anything else that we're going to bring into the show at the moment. But I do want to thank everybody again. DR says, is there anything that could happen for you to pause your buying in the hobby? That's an interesting question right there. I mean, and everyone's going to answer this one differently, right, Sooz? Because player collectors are going to answer differently than investors versus prospectors versus flippers versus broad style collectors. So why don't you take a shot at it first?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say no, because there certainly is something that could always happen, in the hobby to make me stop buying. Excuse me. I think it would have to be like a big scandal, like something to make me. I'm going to cough again, so I'm going to let you talk.
No. Go ahead, have your cough, no problem. Well, Anthony George says, when life happens, I stop buying for a bit. I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, I've taken sort of, like right now, I've bought maybe 2 cards in the last 30 days. I'm trying to just kind of audit my own mind and make sure that that's somewhat accurate. Whereas, there's sometimes where I'm buying, singles, online purchases. I mean, I'm buying several of them. I did go to a local show the other day and bought a few cards, so it's more than 2. But, I think about eBay purchases. I've been slow on eBay now for about 6 months or so. So I don't know why it is. It's just these things go in cycles. You ready for it now, Sooz?
I hope so. No, I agree with that too. I think, especially with like the buying in cycles, like there's times where like I'm buying everything and I can go months then without not buying a single thing. I like to call it like there's peaks and valleys to my collecting, and like sometimes I'm in a valley and sometimes in a peak. Like right now, when it comes to sports cards, I'm probably like in a valley, but my gosh, I've bought a lot of Pokemon cards lately.
So you're still active in cardboard, which is still good. T. Jones says, a collector will always collect. And see, but here's the thing. The adjective of collect, it's not just buying cards, right? There's so many things we can do. I call it, maybe the better descriptor is like hobbying. Like, how do you hobby? And it's not just buying cards. It's I call it playing with your cards, whether you're going to log them in an Excel or you're going to add them to a website in a collector sort of platform, or, input your collection into a platform, whatever it is you're doing, searching on eBay, looking at Instagram, talking to hobby friends. There's so many things that you can do to be active in the hobby without actually buying cards. But as far as, the act of buying cards, yeah, there's many reasons why people slow down here and there. A downturn causes lots of people to slow down, when really that's when you should be buying. Buy low, sell high. It shouldn't go the other way around, but a lot of people got caught on the other end of that recently. Pepino Man, I saw you jump in here. Where'd that go? He says, being broke is the only reason I ever stopped buying cards. And yeah, sometimes people just run out of money, so you stop buying cards. But what would have to happen for me to stop buying cards? Death. I think I have to die. I think that's what has to happen. Literally, that's what's going to have to happen for me to stop buying cards. Really, nothing else, or collecting, or being an active hobbyist. Nothing else is going to stop me. It's been like, literally for me, it's been 40 years of being in the hobby. It's like most of my life. How am I going to stop now? Something crazy would have to happen. And I don't know what that is. Death. Okay, let's keep on going. Mike Petty, you can go months too. I have everything I ever wanted. Yeah, well, good. If you have everything you ever wanted, but then, then why do you keep buying, right? Like, why do we keep collecting? We have everything we ever. I think a lot of the time we find new things that we do want as well, which that's a great segue, actually. The one thing I've learned over the course of the hobby, and especially recently, as I have sort of slowed down building out certain areas of my collection because I've kind of accomplished some goals. One thing I've learned is that I always find more things that I find interesting or that I can collect. And whether it's just a different set or a different, like a type of insert that I want to chase, or a player that I decide I'm going to buy, 5 or 10 of their cards, that sort of thing. But Sooz, you recently went through a process where you did add a new player to your player collecting. And I found that really interesting, not because of, okay, who's the player? That's interesting too, but I wanted you to help explain, or for anyone who might be thinking to themselves, I'm getting the hobby's becoming a little stale for me. I want to find something else to collect. What are some ways, or how would you advise somebody to go about kind of reinvigorating their hobby experience by adding a new PC to their overall collection?
Yeah, so I recently started collecting like Anthony Rizzo cards on the Yankees only. Like I don't collect this. I actually have like a bunch of autographs when he was on the Cubs, but just from pulling them. But for me, the important thing was like I need to feel like a certain connection to a player and like something about them. Like I don't know how, but it just feels right. And like obviously that was with Jeter, and like I have a whole bunch of Judge cards. And with Rizzo, I actually always liked him, but he was on the Cubs, and I'm not gonna collect a Cubs player. Like it's just not gonna happen. But then when he came to the Yankees, I was like, absolutely. And I think when it comes to collecting a player specifically, because that's a little bit tougher, because then it's like you bought all these cards of this player, and I'm talking about collecting. I'm not talking about investing. Like you need to have a certain connection. Like what is that connection? Did this person grow up in your hometown? Do they play your favorite position on your favorite team? And for me, like I actually love catchers too. So it's like Rizzo's not my only collection. Like I collect Elston Howard cards as well. And I love, his story and what he meant for the Yankees. And so I have a whole bunch of his cards. And I think that's the important part. It's like, find the thing that makes you connect with the player as well. So like our hobby is connections with other hobbyists, but for me, it's also like connections to that player. So I find the player that like I feel a connection to, and I want to sort of like celebrate them. And for me, I do that by collecting their cards.
Yeah, find a connection, right? Find something really important. I think that's great advice, to find that connection with the subject of your next PC. We use the term PC very loosely. It's like, what's your PC? People say, who do you collect? Wow, what do I collect? Lots of things. I collect these 7 players and these 16 sets and these different sport. Like I collect, there's always more to collect. And if you're going to collect something, if you're going to look for something new to collect, make sure it has meaning to you. Otherwise, you're probably going to get bored with it. So I think that's great advice. Mike Petty says, I like scanning all the cards with the new scanner. I like to look at them in pics better than in hand. And that's fair. And it's right. Part of collecting, part of hobbying is the action of, the new card comes in, you process it into your collection, or you get that new scanner and you rescan everything. It gives you that chance to actually interact with your cards again that you may not have for a little while. Get Swifty, I like this one, says collecting is like a puzzle. You want to see how it turns out, which is interesting because it implies that you don't know how it's going to turn out at the beginning. But in the end is where you find the greatest joy of finishing something that you may not have expected. It's interesting because when is the end? That's the other thing. To me, the end is as undefined as sometimes the project of collecting is at the outset. But good comments, Get Swifty. Eric says, our wives say to stop collecting. That could be a reason why Eric would stop. I don't know, Eric. That wouldn't stop me. I tell you that. But my wife would never say that either. Brian says, I enjoy just looking at my cards. They bring up a memory. Most of those memories make me smile. Wonderful. That's a great reason to collect. Rich Barone tells me not to die, or he'd have to get a dead cut of mine, because Rich collects, he calls them dead cuts. It's quite an aggressive way to label cut autos of deceased players. Dead cuts. Rich, love you. DR says, I think selling cards and shipping with care is a fun, underrated way to hobby. That's an interesting take, right? Because it's kind of the opposite of collecting. It's now disposing and moving them out. But there's one thing about selling that is so rewarding, and that is knowing that you've placed a card into someone's collection that they are going to cherish and love. I have the privilege of doing that oftentimes at card shows, and you just know there are sales you make where they're just going to put it in their own showcase, or they're going to add it to their trade box. That's fine too. But when you can sell a card to somebody who's going to love that card, it's really a great feeling. There was a question in here for you, Sooz, which was earlier, but it was basically asking, have you ever sold the card? Do you sell your cards ever?
Yeah, I've sold plenty of cards back in the day. When my friend and I had our card block, we actually tried to like venture into our own sort of like buying cases and like ripping them and like selling cards from them. We did the whole like case breaking thing before it was cool and popular. And we actually did like case breaks on the blog as well. And like people would buy, and we did it because like we can't afford like basic cards, right? Or not basic. We could like, we're both Yankees fans. We wanted to pull like giant Yankees cards, and we can't afford the giant Yankees cards. But so what we were doing was like we were selling at cost. Like we weren't making any money off of our case breaks, and we were selling at cost the spots in the break for teams. And we were doing this in 2011. And I remember specifically it was 2011 because we opened 2011 Finest, and I had traded the Blue Jays because nobody bought the Blue Jays. And so we had the Blue Jays and I traded the Blue Jays to the Angels guy because I worked in South Jersey. When I mentioned I worked in Press Atlantic City, and I covered Mike Trout when he was in high school. So I was trying to collect some of his cards. So I'm like, yeah, let's trade into the Angels. And we pulled the finest Mike Trout rookie X-Fractor autograph from it. So yes, so I have sold cards in the past, and the reason I mentioned because we were opening other product and like selling like to singles and selling the autographs. Like we were trying to say like, hey, maybe we can make this as a business, and we did not. We've done other things with our lives since then. Having said that, I've sold cards on my own, like just on eBay and stuff, but I haven't sold a card in a very long time. I just can't deal with the hassle of like going to the post. I don't even want to go to the post office. Like I have something I need to send somebody that I did not like, I picked up for them at a show, and it's been sitting here for like 2 months because I don't want to go to the post office. Like I just don't want to do it. So I would be a terrible seller, and so I don't do it.
Yeah, I hear you on the post office. The whole process of selling cards on eBay, I don't enjoy whatsoever. That's why, consignment sellers do provide a great service for the most part. Bent Cardboard says someone needs to get the guy from Jack of All Trades on their show to talk about where the hobby's gone since his documentary. Hint, hint. Yeah, that'd be a great idea, Bent Cardboard. Pepino Man says with vintage, you can buy the same cards twice, but never have the same card because their wounds make them different. That's a cool outlook. I like that outlook. I like, when it comes to collecting vintage, Sooz, like I don't want a PSA 9. I don't want a gem mint card. I want it more in that like 4 to 7 range if it's really old. And 7 is a very strong grade, but even, yeah, oh God, that's one of the most beautiful cards ever made right there. 53 Topps, Willie Mays, and a 2.5.
Yeah, and look at it. It looks beautiful. My husband bought this.
It's a great card.
Yeah, I agree. Like I don't need a PSA 9 or a 10 in vintage cards. Like I give me the love. I want to see some love on those cards.
Right. They're old. They've traveled through many hands. I want that card to have had a life of its own, but to still be presentable, of course.
I mean, this card, like it's a 2.5, and it looks beautiful. Like
it does.
It's gorgeous. Like Eric says it all the time. Those back pages, like buy the card, not the grade, and like I agree 100% with that.
100%. T-Dot says, Sooz, do you have any Gretzky's?
I do.
You do? I was surprised.
2010-ish, somewhere around there, at one of the Nationals, I redeemed, some packs at the Upper Deck booth. And in my packs, which I didn't open till months later, I do this all the time, there was a Wayne Gretzky autograph, numbered 9 of 9, his jersey. So 99.
Yeah.
And, I still have it because I don't sell cards, so I still have it. So yes, I have a Gretzky card.
That's a nice pull. Congratulations. Darren wants to know if we've ever had Sasha T on a guest. No, never had Sasha T on Sports Cards Live. David French, I like this. I keep asking myself, what does this card mean to me? Is it legendary? Is it a childhood tweak? Is it something that makes me feel young for a moment or takes me back for a moment? Right there. I think he's actually like kind of defining what the feeling of nostalgia actually is. So good job on that, David French. I like that one. James says, my wife asks me, don't you have a card show to go to get me out of the house? I like that. Pretty funny. I'm about to say, I wish my wife would say that to me too sometimes, but she lets me go for sure. Ben Carbor says Bobby Burrell can give an answer on the percentage of vintage packs that are fake. I don't think he can, though. I mean, how can anybody give that answer? As informed and researched as Bobby is, I just don't know that anybody could really give that answer. Rich Barone says perfectly put on selling. Glad that resonated with you, Rich. Brian Basketball says, I've downloaded and started using the app Center Stage. It uses your iPhone camera. It works great on the newer stuff, but seem to be loading more. Anyone else used it? So I've used it actually, and I recommend it. Check out Center Stage. I'm going to have the founder on the show in March, actually. We've got him coming on in March. So check out the Center Stage app. And that's one of these things that will get better and better as time goes on, because they have a team of developers that are working on that project. So check it out. Lots of comments coming through. Let's do this for a sec, Sooz, because we're already at an hour 40. This has gone by really quick.
I could do this all day. Like, I love talking about cards. I could sit here all day and do this.
It's almost midnight where you are. Let's do this though. You worked at Topps for a while, and Topps, the big announcement came out in August that Fanatics had basically, I've been using the term hijacked the licenses, the baseball, basketball, football licenses right out from under Topps and Panini. And then 4 or 5 months later, big news again, Fanatics acquires Topps. What are your insights into all this? You worked at Topps. What are they going through there right now? What was life like at Topps from the date that was announced until they were acquired? So there was some uncertainty, and now they've been acquired by a even bigger company. What do you think's going on there in those two phases?
I still talk to a lot of people there. I'm friends. Like that, I say this, one of the best things about Topps that I mentioned before though was the people, and I'm still I'm still friends. So there's people I still talk to like at least once a week who work there. But to be honest, I don't bring up work a lot because it's like, I never want to feel like I'm prying, like trying to be like, hey, tell me the inside gossip. Having said that, when the news broke, with the initial news, not just this past one that happened when Topps was acquiring Fanatics, when the news broke that like Fanatics got the baseball license, and I was texting people there and like they didn't even know about it. Like it was one of those things where it was like I was breaking the news to them, and like that's terrible. So you could only imagine that like they're finding out this news there, and what they know is literally what we know. Like the only information they're getting is everything they're getting from social media or like waiting for these articles. So I imagine like the last few months, because it was August, I think the news came out initially, have been a little uncertain because like, what is my future going to look like? Like, are we going to continue to make cards? Are we going to try to do something else? Should I be looking for another job? Like, I'm sure all of those thoughts were going through people's minds. And then, I do think it was a bit of a reprieve to hear that like Fanatics was actually bought Topps, because like, okay, like now there's a path. Before there was no path. Like you didn't know which way you were going. And now there's a path. Like this is what it is. I just think there's still some uncertainty because like, okay, now we're on this path, but who knows what it looks like. But at least we know where it's going. I just don't know how bumpy it's going to be.
Yeah. And I mean, if I'm at Topps right now, and I'm obviously not, and I've only been through what I've been through based on my personal experiences in business, in companies. I've been acquired. When you're acquired, you're always sort of told, oh, it's going to be business as usual. It's never, well, in my experience, it's never been business as usual. Things always change, and it's not to the liking of everybody. So I'm sure there is still some uncertainty, but I think I got to think it's almost better this way than to be acquired than not to be acquired. And, in hindsight, it just makes so much sense to me in hindsight that Fanatics would pursue the acquisition of Topps versus any of the other card companies, because Topps is synonymous with sports cards in American culture. It's Topps. It's not Panini. Panini's Italian culture. They've only been making cards in North America since like 2009 or 10, something like that. So it made a lot of sense for me that they would go after that iconic brand that is really, it's sewn into the thread of culture, of American culture. Makes so much sense to me. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, they needed each other. That's the reality situation. Like Topps needed Fanatics as much as Fanatics needed Topps, because you're not going to make Fanatics trading cards. Like that's it. You're not going to put out Fanatics trading cards and think that like collectors are suddenly going to flock to it and buy it. And like you said, Topps is synonymous with trading cards. So you're going to still continue to make Topps cards. They needed that sort of brand equity to be able to make an impact within the trading card space. Now, Topps obviously needed them because now they don't have any more sports licenses, like of the big main sports. So Topps needed them as well. I think they needed each other just as much. I think Topps needed them, Fanatics, just as much as Fanatics needed Topps. And you're right, it wasn't going to be Panini. Panini wasn't going to make the same impact as having Topps.
I agree. I agree completely. Okay, let's get to some comments here. Gross Bros Parody says, great to hear female advice within the hobby. Got to agree with that. Joe Pro loves the 53 Mays. So do I. What a beauty. Mike Petty, one of my favorite Mays cards, 1953. I only have a 5. That's a nice grade, Mike Petty, in that one. And the 2.5 looks better than mine. Interesting. Buy the card, not the grade, right? Right there. Chris C also loves the Mays. Yeah. Mike Petty says, Jeremy, you have great guests. Sooz is legit. I know. Of course, Sooz is legit, guys. Sooz is definitely legit. I want to bring up Bent Cardboard, and I agree with this 100%, Bent Cardboard. I'd love to hear Bobby's opinion on it as well, because I know he'll have one. So I do agree. Let's hear his opinion and kind of round out the discussion. So I do appreciate that comment. Skeppy says, give us one speculative insight that the hobby seems to be missing in today's market. I mean, this is a powerful, great question, but it's one that we need to think about. So I don't know, Sooz, if something comes to mind, let me know. But you got something? No pressure. No pressure.
Really. I plan on buying the first WWE Prism and not opening it, if that's speculative insight. Yeah. I don't do that kind of stuff, and I'm going to do that with WWE Prism.
There you go. That's interesting. I'm going to go in a different direction. Something did pop into my mind, and my speculative insight that I don't know if the hobby's missing, but I'll share it anyway, is that it all comes down, I've said it before, so sorry if it sounds repetitive to some who watch a lot of my content, but it all comes down to horizon in this hobby. We've seen the market move crazy, to a crazy degree over the last year and a half in both directions, it seems like. But if you zoom out and you look long term and you keep that collector mindset, you're gonna enjoy the hobby, and you're gonna feel, I think, less of it's like your investment portfolio of stocks and that sort of thing, right? If you're looking at it as a retirement, you're not worrying about the day-to-day fluctuations. You're looking at what's this going to be worth when I retire, however many decades out that will be. So if you take the same sort of approach with your collection and not worry about the day-to-day changes, who cares about them? Just enjoy. But if you're in this hobby to make money on the flip really quick, then it's a whole other thing. So hope that's of somewhat value, Skeppy. But I'll put it out to the chat too. Does the chat have anything? Any speculative insight? Speculative insight. Mine wasn't a speculative insight, was it? But if anyone has any speculative insights, throw them into the chat. We'll take a look. We'll take a look for sure. And Jim Hansen says, I have found a new love for beat up cards, writing, pen marks, creases, ripped, burnt, etc. Get these cards on the cheap with lots of history behind them. The uglier, the better. Stars on sale. I mean, that's an extreme position for me. I would say, Jim, like, I don't want them burnt and ripped and all that, but I want a card that's shown some love. How about you, Sooz? Where do you fall with some of these extreme situations like ripped and burned?
Yeah, I'm not gonna collect those. I'm not looking, like, I don't need like a PSA 10, but I'm talking about modern cards. But I still want them to look nice. That's why it's like, buy the card, not the grade. If the card's beat up and has like a mustache, somebody like colored in a mustache on it, I'm not really interested in it.
Yeah, me too. I don't want writing on the card either. Maybe on the back, a pencil mark, like an initial or something would be okay, but all depends on if the front is beautiful. Okay, Chris C. Topps dumped all those 52 mantles into a leg. I want to go back and say stop, right? Like, I think we all want to go back and say stop to that. Okay. Great stuff, everybody. Sooz, let's do this because this is something I want to make sure we hit on. And I know you can bring a lot of knowledge and educate us on this because I think it's a topic that's come out in recent weeks, and it has to do with Bowman's Best 2021 rookies. There's a bit of uncertainty or lack of clarity with these things. I'm going to admit I don't even know what the issue is, but I know there's an issue out there. So what I'd like to ask you to do, Sooz, is two things. Describe the situation. What happened here? Why is there an issue at all? And and explain it. And what's your position on it, if you don't mind? Again, this is about the Bowman's Best 2021 rookies. Baseball.
So once upon a time in baseball, long before there was an RC logo that was on cards, there was a widely well accepted rule as to what a rookie card was. And that was a card that's inserted into a base set that's numbered along with the base set, so like 1 to 100. That includes, veterans in the set, and essentially into a product that is also widely available. Like I can buy it at hobby shops and Target and whatever. That first card was a player's rookie card. Since 2000 something, I always get the years wrong. I'm always shocked when I get a year right. Since like 2006 or whatever, when the RC logo started, Topps would make Bowman, but all those prospects were never part of the base set. They were part of an insert set that resembled the base set, but they were all numbered differently on the back. So like in the base set of Bowman, you would have 1 to 100, and in the Bowman prospect cards, they would be like BP-1, Bowman Prospects -1, 1 through 100. So this way, they're inserts. They're not part of the base set. 2021 Bowman's Best comes out, and you have a slew of prospects that are included in the base card set. They are numbered within the 1 to 100 it would be. So you had Wander Franco and Jason Dominguez and I don't know, Bobby Witt Jr. I don't know. There was a lot of them. And therefore, all the people who have grown up with this rule, including Beckett, who have used this rule, said this Wander Franco and others and friends are rookie cards because they were included in this base card set along with the veterans and other rookies. And that's it. But, there are people who, are like, well, it doesn't have an RC logo on it. It's not a rookie. And completely going against precedent that has been set as to what is a rookie card in baseball. And I say in baseball because baseball is very different, because in the other sports, you don't have as many prospects because essentially you go from the draft to the pro team. So that is where now the controversy comes in, because is 2021 Bowman's Best essentially Wander Franco's rookie card, or is it 2022 Topps that has the RC logo on it? The only difference is between the two cards, because they're both in the base set included with other veterans, is an RC logo. But up to this point, he had never been included in a base set. He was only in the inserts in Bowman products. So that is where the controversy arises.
And what is has the hobby sort of made a collective decision yet as to are these things RCs or not? And what do you think the right direction is for this?
I mean, Beckett is going to list them. They're not the end all to be all of like whatever, but Beckett is going to list them as rookie cards. They do. They have the RC logo next to them in the Beckett database. I think you have people split in the hobby. You have people who are like, nope, this is his rookie card. These are the rookie cards. 2021 Bowman's Best, and these are the rookie cards. And then you have plenty of people who are like, nope, it's not. It doesn't have an RC logo. It's not a rookie card. But Topps has messed that up in the past before, so that really shouldn't matter. Personally, I'm of the mindset that the 2021 Bowman's Best is his rookie card. Having said that, that doesn't mean it's going to be his most desirable card. Like, people are still going to chase 2022 Topps because the RC logo is on there, and they don't understand the rules, nor do they even care of the rules. So, I think that's his rookie card based on, every other rookie card rule that has been in baseball cards since the start of baseball cards. But I don't think it's people are going to chase it. Once his 2022 cards start coming out with RC logo on it, I don't think people are going to chase it the way they had been, like, the weeks right after it came out.
Right. Interesting. Something that I just find to be changing in the hobby is that the definition of rookie card needs to evolve, I believe, as the card companies become more and more, I'll use the word creative with their sets. And what made up the definition of rookie card back when it sort of first debuted in Beckett magazine, let's say in 1980, whatever, may no longer be able to accommodate everything that's going on with all the card companies. So, and I haven't even looked at that definition in a while. I don't really care anymore, but the hobby cares. And do you think, like, is the definition of rookie card, does it need a rework right now, do you feel?
Well, it's also interesting because it wasn't just like Beckett recognizing it back in when, in the contract, in the MLBPA contract, like, people showed screenshots of it and it said, like, prospects cannot be part of the base set. Like, it was because this was a well-established, before Beckett was even around, this was a well-established rule, which is why Beckett went with this rule. Like, first card in a, whatever, in a base set with veterans that of a product that is widely available. Like, there's a reason, like, everybody followed this because it was the widely accepted rule since baseball cards came about. I think that, I just think it's going to be, people will collect his Bowman's Best, which I also have, by the way. I did buy it. And people are going to collect his 2022 cards. I don't think there's any difference. I think that people are going to recognize, as far as the hobby goes, like, they're going to recognize both cards as being collectible and for their different reasons. And but here's the thing too. I actually don't have a problem with it either way. I personally, while I think it's his 2021 Bowman's Best as his rookie card, I don't really care either way. Like, people want to collect cards, like, collect what you want, like, do what you want with them. Like, I actually I think it's just interesting. That's what I find about it.
It was so much easier back in the day to know what a rookie card was versus today because of just how complicated set structures have become. So, and then you throw in the added layers of prospects in Bowman products, and it just makes it's another layer of complexity. So, interesting stuff. Thanks for sort of clarifying and explaining through that. I knew it was something that you could bring to the table and thought that we could have that discussion. So thanks for that. Let's go to some comments again. Bobby said, this is in regards to what percentage of vintage packs are inauthentic. He says, I believe that 100% of the graded packs went through the greatest level of scrutiny that we have. That's a great answer, Bobby. I love that answer. And that's really the only answer that fits the question or the issue. So well done, Bobby. Very crafty, very crafty. Round of applause for that one. Anthony George says, aside from the kid packs Panini makes, I think there's a huge and so very important to our future missing spot for stuff geared to kids specifically. If they don't get into it, this is all for naught. Yeah, I mean, there's some truth to that, right? These cards, we are only the custodians of these cards and these items while we hold them. Where are they going when we're done with them? They have to go somewhere. So hopefully there's going to be people who want to own them decades down the road. Mike Petty says, I draw the line with surface creases that barely show. Fair. I mean, that's collect what you like, right? For sure. T. Jones says, I wanted the half honus. that's beat up for sure. It is beat up for sure. We actually had it on the agenda to touch on tonight. So let's touch on it now. The half honus. I mean, I think it's awesome. I love it. What I think the bidding when we last looked was at $300,000, literally half a card, maybe 55% of a card. At least his face is there. But and I don't have an image handy to bring up. So if anyone doesn't know, it's a T206 Honus Wagner, like the card in a PSA slab. It's the second ever card graded by PSA. The first one was the PSA 8 that was cut by Mastro and is the first card ever. But the second card ever, I think it says authentic on it or something like that.
Genuine.
Yeah. Genuine. I mean, it's only half there, so it's half authentic. But what are your thoughts on this card, Sooz? Like, is that a card you'd like to own?
I love it. I think it's absurd. I think it's ridiculous in so many different ways, but I absolutely love it. Like, this is a genuine half a card. So it's like I still can't afford it, I love it. I think it's great.
It's an interesting case study in, like, so if you're getting 55% of a card, should it be worth 55% of a price of the card in similar condition, or way less? Probably way less, but it's really funny. Check that out if you haven't. It's literally half a card in a slab. Doesn't look terrible. It really doesn't look terrible. It might be the nicest half card I've ever seen. Haven't seen many half cards though, right? Let's be real. Okay, thanks for that, Hits and Chicks. Chris Harris has a speculative insight. He says, start loading up on Scott Rowland, Andrew Jones, and Todd Helton cards. They're all getting into the Hall of Fame. There we go. And David French says, I'd like to hear a speculative conversation about the price curve and the glut of PSA backlog getting through. Will prices go back up as the backlog finishes flooding the market? It's a really good question. And it's a question I don't even know if we're going to have time for. We're at the 2-hour mark now, Sooz, but that's a really good question, David French. Do you have any thoughts on it, Sooz?
No, I do find that very interesting. It's not something I've thought a lot about, not other than when you just brought it up, but I definitely think that's something super interesting because, hopefully it gets back to a normal sort of cadence of like cards that are entering the market of graded cards. So if you have this sort of regular intervals of like the number of cards that are entering the market, it should sort of even things out, I would imagine. But also this is not my strong suit, admittedly.
Yeah, no, I hear it's definitely a moment in time here where more cards than ever were submitted. Obviously, the backlog was created. The grading companies had to, both PSA, BGS had to actually like shut down the intake or raise prices so high to literally just stop them from coming in to a large degree. I don't know exactly how many, but a large percentage. And it's going to be interesting to watch over the next several months. This isn't something, I don't think it's something that's going to just happen quickly, i.e., like what I mean by that is I don't think that the effect of the backlog is just we're going to notice it in its entirety in 2022, for example. I think it's going to take a while to make its way through the hobby over a couple of years, and we'll see what happens after. And like Sooz said, hopefully not. I'm sure the grading companies don't want it to go back to the old cadence, but hopefully it'll get down. It'll just, instead of PSA having to grade 30 to 40,000 cards a day, because that's a lot being pumped into the hobby every day. Hopefully it'll come down to a level that is more absorbable by the hobby. So it'll be interesting to watch though, and a good case study, I would think. Any further comments, Sooz?
No, I agree with that fully.
Bent Cardboard says RC logos are overrated, and I can definitely see an argument for that. And wow, I'm just scrolling through I can't even read these all, everybody. Thank you so much. I'm not going to be able to get to any more, I don't think. There's so many in there, but thank you for all the chat tonight. Sooz, I mean, listen, we got through pretty much everything that we had in the notes. We're at 2 hours. I think we're going to have to end this thing. I mean, you're like, well, we don't have to, Jared. We can keep going.
I can keep going. We should do like a telethon and just do like 24 hours of just like card chat one day.
24 hours.
We'll raise money for some kind of charity and we'll just keep going.
Well, and now we're doing that, right? You know that.
Oh
Now
no, I didn't know. I didn't know that.
no, you and I, we're
Oh
doing
yeah,
that.
let's do it. I'm in. Let's do it.
Okay, that's going to happen now. We're going to do a 24. I got to make okay. We're most likely going to do a 24-hour live stream telethon talking about sports cards at some point in the future to raise money for something. We'll figure that all out, but that, I mean, pinky swear on that.
Yep. And
Pinky swear. All right. We'll figure that out. That's a great initiative. I'm glad you just kind of whipped that off really quick there. Okay. Well, I'll read out a few more comments, guys. Get your final comments into the chat. I want to thank you, Sooz, for coming on. I mean, it's been maybe one of the fastest 2-hour episodes I've ever done. Like literally, this went by really fast for me. I hope you've enjoyed it. I know the chat's enjoyed it. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. But yeah, any sort of final comments or anything you want to share with anybody?
yeah, so I'm gonna show some cards.
Oh, show some cards.
This Jeter card. This is 2014 Topps update. This was the first Jeter card that I ever got to pick the image for on a card. So it's one of my favorite Jeter cards.
Oh, no doubt.
And then
You
this
hear that, everybody? She picked the photo for that card.
And this is the clear variation. I don't know if you could tell. Like you could see me throw it. And this is what Love in the Hobby looks like. My husband bought this for me for like our Valentine's Day one year, and because he knew I picked this card. So that's what card collecting love looks like.
It looks like that Jeter card. I want to copy that Jeter card now just because I've had you on the show. That's really, really cool. Okay, here's a great question for you from Ka. He says, which card do you want to make if you could go back and make it? Mike Trout, Topps Chrome Update Rookie, or Topps Brady Chrome Rookie?
Good question.
I think he means like remake it almost, right? If you go back and remake it, change the image sort of thing.
Well, because like Mike Trout, they didn't have those cards. That's what it is. Like they don't exist. So it's like because Mike Trout came later in the season, so like he doesn't have a ton of rookie cards. Yeah, I would probably go with the Mike Trout Topps Chrome. But it have to be autographed. Like can't just be like the base chrome. And so I think a Mike Trout Topps Chrome auto superfractor would be absurd. Yeah.
There you go. Thanks for the answer. Darren says, thanks for a great episode, Sooz, Jeremy. 2 more hours. I don't know about 2 more hours. Anthony George says he'll watch the whole thing. Rich Barone will make the first donation. That's really nice of both of you guys. Skeppy says, thanks, Susan. Great show. Very nice. Pepino Man, great chat. Got my hobby fill for the day. Always happy to have you, Pepino Man, along with everybody else, of course, but got to meet Pepino Man at the National. Mike Petty says, thanks, Sooz. And of course, thanks to the best host for Baseball Card Talk. Hey, thank you, Mike Petty. You are welcome. Thank you, Chris C. Thank you, Anthony George. Thank you, Brian Basketballs. Alf Cadet says, Sooz, what's your favorite New York Rangers cards?
I just bought a Chris Kreider Young Guns. I just got it the other day, so it was exciting. I have a couple of Henrik Lundqvist's autographs. So, watching his ceremony yesterday was a little teary-eyed.
Yeah, I bet. Was it the number retirement? Is that
the
what
number
it was?
retirement? Yeah.
Awesome. Mike Petty says, no, that's a collector. Picks the pick and collects the card. Yeah, right? For sure. That's really cool. Really cool. Darren says, hey, the rookie card mark is not overrated. I based my entire logo around it. That's fair too. Chad Shipper, good to see you. Good to see you. Better late than never. Card Killer, nice to see you, Card Killer. Card Killer has an amazing Oscar Robertson 61 Fleer card art card. I think it sold tonight. Did it end tonight? This thing last I saw was at $2,650. Really, really cool. Congrats to you, Card Killer, and always happy to see you there. T-Dot, favorite card show host. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. And I'm just going to the final comment. Jeremy Allen says, guest for after hours. No guest for after hours, everybody. I may do one nonetheless. In a few minutes here. And maybe even just myself. There's a few things I could talk about and show and all that. You're going to sleep. I mean, it's late where you are. Are you going to sleep or are you staying up for a while?
I'll probably watch Saturday Night Live and then go to bed
and chill out.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm like wired and I'm like fired up talking about cards. So I need to do.
Here's what I'm gonna do. we're going to end this episode. We're at 2 hours and 10 minutes, just about. I'm going to take about 10 minutes myself. I forgot to bring a glass of water down with me tonight, so I'm parched here. You can grab a glass of water and come back live on an episode of After Hours and just hang out with the chat. And Sooz, you're welcome to join if you'd like. It'll be, it'll be more chill, no agenda sort of thing. So if you want to join, let me know. I'll send you a new link for that. And for everybody else, I will be back shortly with some After Hours. Yes, Daniel Busby, there is an After Hour show. I just decided right now. If not, get the Red Bull for another hour. No, we'll come back. We'll come back. Alf Godet, you busted me. Exactly. Rich says New Yorkers don't sleep.
It's true. It's very true.
And there we go. Darren says Sooz encore for After Hours. So it's up to you. If you want to join, you're welcome to. We can hang out for another hour or so.
I'll let you know. I might. It's like if once that break, like those 10 minutes, I might be passed out. I'm like now I'm fired up, but like once I like stop, I'm like, oh yeah, and then
no pressure at all. Okay, guys, we're gonna end this one now. Thanks everybody for joining. Collectible Live tomorrow night, 7:00 Eastern on the Collectible TV YouTube channel. I will be having another show. Those shows are really shaping up. I'm really happy with how they're going. So check them out. Really interesting stuff. Thank you, Chris C. Greatly appreciate that. Rich says we should start the 24-hour show now. No, Rich, we're going to have to kind of prepare for that one in advance. But again, thanks everybody. And next Saturday on the show, Tim Getch, CEO of ComC and founder, will be back again to talk about what's going on over there. So everybody, thank you for joining. Sooz, thank you so much. This was awesome. Stay right there for a second. And this one is now over. See you guys.